In today's episode, we have Mary Nunaley, who is going to share why you should consider adding gamification elements to your online courses. You will also get to hear the difference between functional and behavioral types of gamification, how giving your audience quick wins can help completion rates, and what the future looks like for making online courses more interactive. And now, on with the show. Welcome to the Online Course Igniter podcast, where you'll hear from successful course creators and how they were able to turn their passion into a thriving online business empire. Hey everyone, thank you for checking out the podcast today. We have Mary Nunaley with us from Lavender Dragon team, who is an instructional designer and gamification expert, which is something that I am really interested into diving deep in today because I think gamification is awesome. I've seen it used in various apps and courses and all kinds of different content, and this will be an exciting podcast. So how are you doing today, Mary?
I am doing fantastic. Thanks, Jeremy. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing great. Very excited to have you on the podcast today and go ahead and get started into the main reason why we're here and just see how you can help out other online course creators come up with some great ways to just inspire students to take more action in their courses. But before we do, I always like to start at the beginning and just kind of find out where you came from and how did you get into online business. So if you would just take a couple minutes and tell us, what were you doing before you got into online courses, or is that something you've always been doing?
So that's a great question. I come from a corporate and higher education background. And so I was on the cusp of online courses when it was first starting at the academic level. We used to do distance learning by sending students videotapes, if you can believe it. And I helped with the team on my campus and in the state of Tennessee bring the Tennessee Board of Regents schools online. Fell in love with that, did my master's degree online as one of the first cohorts to do a fully online degree. Then left higher education and went back to the corporate world where, again, most of our courses were delivered, through the web to employees all around the globe. And then about 4 years ago, my son and I decided to take the plunge and create our own company and our own business, focusing on online course creation and putting in those elements of gamification and game-based learning that he and I are both so drawn to. So that's sort of my career path in a very small nutshell.
Very awesome. So when you started, have you been doing the gamification the whole time, or is that something that is newer that you implemented in the past 4 years?
So I have been interested in gamification long before that. In fact, at the company I was at before I left to start my own business, we gamified my team. I led a team of 20 instructional designers, and we created our own version of gamification called potatofication, where we used gamification techniques to onboard new designers. And you earned Mr. Potato Heads, and we had recipes and things like that because my first career was in the food industry. So everything always goes back to food.
That's awesome. That's great because whenever I use analogies, it seems like they're always food analogies.
Yeah, well, everyone has to eat, so people can
Exactly,
relate
yeah.
to that. So yeah, my interest in gamification goes way back. I took a course on Coursera with Professor Werbach, and then I read everything that was out there. And then at the company that I was at, we had the privilege of Yu-Kai Chow actually coming to spend a couple days with our team to talk about gamification. And if you're not familiar with Yu-Kai Chow, he is the founder of the Octalysis framework, which is gamification that's based more on behavioral design and less on function focus. So I really took that to heart, and we implement a lot of his ideas and strategies in what we do.
Okay, awesome. So I think this would be a good moment because I am pretty familiar with what gamification is. I probably don't know all of it. And I know that there's probably some people listening right now who is like, what are they talking about? So
Yes.
let's go ahead and simplify for a moment. For everyone out there who's listening right now, could you just explain what gamification is and how it could help someone who might be interested in creating their online course or making their course better?
Sure. So at its core, gamification is about motivating your learners to excel and exceed, and at the end of the day, complete your course. There are two different schools of thought. One is more function focused, and that's what we see most often when we're talking about gamification, which is points, badges, and leaderboards. And then there's more of a human focused direction towards gamification, which really applies techniques from behavioral psychology, still using points, badges, and leaderboards, but goes more in depth about, well, why are we creating these badges, or what's the action that we really want that learner to take so it's more meaningful. And so you also apply a lot of game-based techniques, and my son and I are both avid gamers. He's more role playing, I'm more tabletop, but both of those types of games have things in common that can easily be transferred to your online course.
Okay, so we see this, and the word gamification comes from that fundamental thing where you're playing a game and you do something and you get a badge or an award, or you level up to the next level, or get a better character. And we started seeing this in business. Now, I noticed it probably only in the past couple years. You obviously have been paying attention a lot longer than I have, but I've seen applications and software start taking this to heart, where you do something on software that could be task management software, but it shoots up a little badge and says, "Congratulations, you finished 10 tasks today."
Right.
That's what we're talking about, correct?
It is, yes. And
Okay.
one of the best examples that I've come across lately is if you've ever tried to learn a foreign language and you use the Duolingo app.
Mm-hmm.
They because they've built in not only the badges and the points, but also that motivation. Um, you know, they have a countdown timer each week saying, "Hey, do you want to move up to the next rank? You've only got 45 minutes to get X number of points."
Hmm.
Which is what I was doing last night because I wanted to rank up to the Diamond League.
Yeah, that is a great application. I have that application myself trying to learn Spanish, so it is a good one.
Yes.
Okay, so when someone is talking about doing this, say for an online course, why is gamification important? How can that help someone doing an online course?
That's a great question and answer. So, as a course creator, applying some of those gamification strategies really forces you to take a step back and think about the content that you're delivering and how you're delivering it to the student. And are you making it engaging? Are you building in places where the student can either compete against themselves, or, and when I say compete, keep in mind that we're talking about sort of games. So, how do they stay motivated to finish your course? And it's an abysmal world out there with less than 10% of students completing online courses. And so, you want to stay ahead of that. For the learner, adding those gamification elements really helps them not only have a more clear path, but have a better learning experience. And so, if you think about your course, what are the desired actions that you want your learners to take to master the subject or have that transformation? And then how are you going to do that? And how are you going to reward them for doing those things? Or how are you going to punish them for not taking those actions?
I like that. So, what would be some examples of some awards that you could have in an online course that would help the learner progress through that course?
Jeremy, that's a great question. So, one of the things that we're currently working on with a client is if the learners complete all of the activities in a specific module or lesson, they then get what we're calling a mystery box, and they get to pick from one of three, let's think, visual doors. And behind those doors, they get some extra content that's going to help them achieve their goals. So, this is a writing class. Maybe somebody wants some additional help on editing. Maybe they want some additional help on marketing. Maybe they want some additional help on defining their niche. Well, they get to pick the door that they want. And then the course creator is going to have some bonus material for them, but only if they complete the lesson.
Oh, that's awesome. I like that. That gives me that has a brain rolling with some ideas now.
Awesome,
Now,
awesome. And again, it's something that can be done without a lot of software because you could just, put a picture of three doors in your learning management system, and then each one of those is a link to a different document. So it doesn't have to, involve a lot of expensive software either.
yeah, and I definitely want to get into that. How would you set something up like this? But before we do, I noticed you also said that you could maybe take some things away from people if they're not completing, or what would be some I don't know if you'd call them negative gamifications that you could add to this?
Yeah, well, so for example, going back to the Duolingo that we both mentioned, if you get too many questions wrong, you lose a heart or a life, and then you either have to earn more hearts or you have to buy some. So that's a negative if you make a lot of mistakes. In the online course, that might be, instead of giving them unlimited attempts at a quiz, you only give them two. Or, you give them, let's say you have an assignment that they submit to you, you give them less time to do the assignment. So it adds that extra pressure to, like, oh, I've got to complete this. And for those procrastinators out there, it might actually be a positive.
That would definitely work for me because I am one of those people. I like waiting, and I love getting those little badges and hearts. When they pop up on the screen, it just, I mean, what is it doing? Is it giving you like an adrenaline rush, or doing how does the psychology of that actually play into helping someone learn more?
Yes, so some of it is an adrenaline rush, and some of it is just building on that sense of development and accomplishment that we all like to have. And especially as adults, we don't often get that as much as a child does, for example. A child learns to tie their shoes, and it's like, hey, little Susie learned to tie her shoes. Or, they're playing kickball, and it's like, oh, you kicked the ball and you didn't fall down. Good for you. As adults, what we mostly get is, well, how come you didn't turn that report in on time? Or, why didn't you make that deadline? So having those little small, like, pats on the back are a really strong motivator.
Yeah, definitely. I've thought about this. It's like building confidence. When we lose our confidence, that's when we start procrastinating or not doing the things that we should be doing. And it seems like this can help you build a little bit of confidence over time. When you're doing Duolingo, which is if you don't know what that app is, it's to help you learn another language. When you're doing that app and you're getting those badges and you're unlocking things, you want to progress because you're getting excited, you're getting more confident, and you're learning. So it's a really neat technique to have.
Yes. And, again, using Duolingo, since we've been talking about that, even depending on what language you're learning, the characters that, like, clap their hands or cheer or smile when you get an answer correct, it's like, oh, I don't get that so much in the real world. It's just like, I'm expected to do my job. And so having, this little virtual person go, good job, it's like, that makes me feel good.
Right, definitely. Now, speaking of that, do you ever do any gamification around a community or multiple people, or is it always just kind of a personal thing that someone is going through?
No, that's a great question. And again, going back to the client that I'd mentioned earlier, he is also working on gamifying a community. And so we're coming up with some ideas that the members of the community can also get badges or get extra recognition by going out and helping another community member, sharing their knowledge and expertise, sharing the community with other people. So it is definitely something that works well in communities. And if you can put the community together and have them do some, like, group quests, similar to what you might do in a role playing game, that also builds some of that camaraderie. And it should always be optional, though. You don't want to
Mhm.
force somebody, because I know many of us think back to school and it's like, oh no, not a group project. But if you make it optional, then, first of all, some people are going to join just because they don't want to be left out. And then as they get involved, they're like, oh, now I don't want to let my teammates down. That's another way to make that community more, quote unquote, gamified.
Right. Yeah. It again gives me some more ideas because I'm thinking about my son who likes to play Fortnite.
Uh huh.
And in that game, you can play solo by yourself or you can get in a squad with other people. They have leaderboards, which I think would help, on a competition basis. If you saw maybe some other people are getting more hearts than you might jump in the app and try to finish some real quick yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways to do it. And, even if you look at Facebook, Facebook has started adding some of those elements even to their groups and their pages, where you can be a top fan, or you're in a group and you're
Mm.
recognized as being new to the group, or somebody that's a visual contributor, or somebody
Yeah,
who's a
that's right.
conversation starter. So it's not really in depth, but it's, they're starting. Even on social media platforms, you're starting to see some of those elements come in.
I remember getting a Facebook badge one time and feeling that like, "Oh, look at me, I'm a conversation starter. I like to talk to people."
Exactly. Yeah. So, it's small, but it's a good step. So now in your own online course groups, that's something that you can build on. And if you're doing a group in Facebook, you can actually start by using the badges that are already built onto the group and then create your own.
Yes, and then, I saw someone else do this in a Facebook group where they had gone into a graphic design program, and I forget which milestone they had reached, but they had reached some milestone, and the owner of the group had taken their picture and put it in, graphic and said, "Congratulations, your Facebook group reached 100 people." And so the owner of that group was presenting this kind of like a badge or an award to the rest of the group members. And then shortly after, you saw a couple more of those popped up because obviously people got excited and joined in.
Exactly. And there's a few groups that I belong to for business owners and such. And at the start of each month, they do a graphic that recognizes the top 10 contributors. And it's kind of fun, especially when I'm not expecting it. It's like, oh, really? I was a top contributor. That's kind of cool. So that's another way in your group so that you can recognize people is going into the data and seeing where they're making that contribution. And some folks are going to really then strive for that month after month, and other people are like, whatever. But it's a fun way to recognize accomplishment and achievement.
Now, when someone is creating an online course, and I always try to think to the person who is listening to this podcast, and how can we help that person? And typically, the audience of this podcast either hasn't created a course yet and they're thinking about it, or they're on their course creation journey and they're just maybe needing a little more help, or maybe they just like listening to us talk. But
Sure.
I try to think to myself, if someone was creating a course and they're listening to this podcast episode, gamification might sound complicated. So, at what point in an online course creation journey would you recommend someone to put gamification into their online course? For example, would you do it right in the beginning, or would you wait a little while? How would you recommend that to someone?
That's a great question. And typically with our clients, we recommend that they have created at least one, if not two courses already, mastered isn't necessarily the best word, but become comfortable with the online course creation process, feel comfortable that their content is accurate and that they're getting the results that they want. And now they want to take it to the next level, whether it's to improve course completion rates, to build more engagement. But trying to add gamification on right at the beginning can be very overwhelming.
Hello, course creators. Are you struggling with marketing and selling your online course? If so, then head over to our free community where successful course creators are ready to help you create, market, and sell your expertise. Go to onlinecourseigniter.com/community now to join. That's onlinecourseigniter.com/community. So, talking about gamification and it being kind of complicated, let's imagine that someone out there wants to begin, but we don't want to get real involved. So, what is something that could be basic or very simple for someone to set up in their online course?
Sure, Jeremy, that's a great question. So, one of the things that I recommend, and this goes back to the days when I used to train face to face and didn't have time to necessarily proof all my work. And I'd go to my audience and say, hey, first person who finds a typo, I got a Kit Kat bar for you. So, it's kind of like an Easter egg because I know there's a mistake. I just don't know exactly where it is. Much like movie producers hiding Easter eggs into movies or TV shows. So, in your online course, you could put a little Easter egg, let's say in one of your videos, and then leave a comment to your students saying, email me if you see such and such. And that might be something that you really want them to focus on, or it might be, like a little subtle message on the backdrop, something like that. But it's a way to kind of build, because now your learners are like, oh, I got to pay attention. So I don't recommend overusing it, but it's a fun, simple way to get your audience to pay a little bit more attention to what you're doing. The mystery box, mystery doors that I alluded to earlier too is another fun, simple way. You just need to think through, like, what does the student have to do to earn access to the door? But then it's really just a graphic with a URL on top of it that takes them to a document or something that you want to give them for some bonus content without getting deep into the weeds of points, badges, leaderboards, all of that. So it's sort of dipping your toe into the water.
Okay, yeah, it seems like if you were using an online course platform like, say Thinkific or Kajabi or something like that, you could just make a lesson that's text based or image based and have those links right there in the course itself.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, let's say that you wanted to take it the next step further, and this is something that you're really excited about, and you strive for those completion rates. You want your students to succeed, and you see how gamification could really help out. Where's the next step? How does someone get into this? What kind of software are you using for something like this?
So you can actually do it with just something as simple as Google Sheets and a good graphics editor. Or you can invest in some, heavy duty software. I know Thinkific is beginning to work with some creators to have apps that integrate that have gamification elements. What I would actually recommend is to either read the Actionable Gamification book by Yu Kai Chow or any of the books by Carl Kapp that talk about gamification and game based learning, because you need to understand what you're doing before you just dive into it. And this is the academic in me coming out.
Yeah, it goes back to the fundamentals, right? Like software can be changed or relearned or whatever, but it's you really want to focus on the fundamentals is what you're saying.
Exactly. So, I mean, I've just recently discovered Glide apps, and I'm working on gamifying a course using Glide app, and that's a no code app program. So it's like, oh, but you still have to think through everything that you want the learner to do. So instead of just jumping in and going, oh, let me make some badges. Oh, let me give them some points. Well, why are you giving them a badge? What's the rationale behind it? What do they need to earn it? Because if all you're doing is just giving them badges for like, oh, you logged into my course, here's a badge. Oh, you watched a video, here's a badge. They don't those badges then don't have meaning, and so you've really defeated the purpose of gamifying your course.
Ah, yeah, that makes total sense. Okay, cool. So one question that popped up that I was thinking about too is gamification ever monetized? I mean, I know, like, talking about video games, they try to monetize every award and thing that you can do. But have you ever seen that in a business setting where someone did something and it gamified and not only gave them the opportunity to progress and learn more, but there was some kind of monetary value attached to it?
So I guess Starbucks kind of does that. It's a very low level system of gamification, but one of those first ones where they want you to go to Starbucks and buy more of their things. And as you make more purchases or complete customized to you challenges, you earn points that can be then exchanged for products.
Okay, yeah, I was thinking the other day we got a free ice cream because we go to this ice cream place all the time, and you buy 9 ice creams and you get that tenth one for free, right?
Exactly. Well, and again, using Starbucks because that's pretty worldwide known. They do every year like the win Starbucks for life. Well, the way you get your little playing pieces is to make more purchases, and in the meantime, they're also saying, hey, look, you've got 200 points. That'll get you a free sandwich. It's like, oh, well, I'm gonna not just get a sandwich. I'm gonna go buy a coffee to go with it. So that's one of the many businesses that I've seen sort of monetize in terms of that sense.
Yeah, you just reminded me of the McDonald's Monopoly also, where they
Exactly, yes.
put the little Monopoly stickers on the side of fries, but you can only get it if you get the large fries or something.
That's it, or, you have to buy a sandwich in order to get the game piece.
Okay, cool. So that's really interesting. So what are some really cool like gamification examples that you've seen in the past, specifically for online courses? I know we're talking about different businesses, but bringing it back to online courses, can you give any examples of some really spectacular gamification examples?
So, just full disclosure, I'm gonna come across as this, like, Yukai fangirl, but he actually has a gamified freemium site called the Actalysis Island that gamifies and exemplifies everything that he teaches about gamification. So you level up, you travel around the island, you watch different videos, you learn new content, and you learn how to apply gamification to your own courses by participating in the island. So for me, that's one of my favorite ones. Um, Experientify is another one that several of my associates have recommended. So that might be one worth checking out as well.
Okay, cool. And we'll definitely link all of these up in the show notes for everyone, because I know the spellings can be a little tricky. I've heard of the Experienceify. Someone mentioned that, and I believe that is for courses that has a gamification element to it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so that's one that might be worth checking out if you're wondering about what kind of platform to use. That might be one. And then the island, that sounds really neat. What was the name? Italysis
So it's,
Island.
yeah, Talasys Island, and I'll be sure to send you a link to it.
Yeah.
But so the island, as actually, if you want to learn more about the theory without having to read a book, and experience in action as well, how you can gamify a course, and it's actually fairly complex but fairly low tech.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's really neat. We'll link those up, and yeah, this has just been an awesome talk, and I just think that it's definitely the world is kind of changing around us, and attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. And it's sad to think that there are so many great programs and courses out there that are teaching people all kinds of different things. And you go and you buy, of course, I've been guilty of it myself, where I've spent lots of money on online courses and never opened them, or just, did a little bit of them and then never came back to it. And so it seems like this would definitely be a way to try to help get people through those courses so that they can learn what they're trying to learn.
Exactly. And I'm guilty of this as well. I mean, there's the island of misfit toys. I call it the virtual shelf of misfit courses that sounded good, but I just never got around to. Or I started and it didn't meet, I just didn't feel the motivation to complete it. And that's kind of my mission, is to help course creators design courses that will, you know, have people finish, or at least make it more than 10% through.
Yeah, it's just it's amazing to me that that happens so often. And what do you think that that's attributed to, other than just people being lazy?
Well, and I think sometimes it's a miscommunication between what you think is going to be in the course and what it actually is. Sometimes I think life happens and you start off with the best intentions, just like, New Year's resolutions. And then you realize that, oh, I actually have to like spend 5 hours a week working at this. I'm never going to get it done. And then I think also, and I'm guilty of this as well, both as a participant and as a recipient, a lot of times there are course giveaways or item giveaways, and it's like that fear of missing out. It's like, ooh, I want that. Ooh, I want that. And then you have this whole library of things, and then you're just like, why did I click that button? Why did I subscribe to this? Instead of really having targeted, like, here's the specific thing that I need now to help me move forward. And I'm not going to buy anything until I complete that. And that's so much harder to do. And this is coming from the person who ends up purchasing the same book 7 or 8 times, because I'm like, oh, that looks really good. And my son's like, Mom, you already have it. No, I don't. And I get home like, oh, you're right. There's this like copy number 7. So
So, so what about getting someone into that? I know that a big problem, as you mentioned, is that a lot of people don't even start. So, is there a way that we can help someone just even open the course and begin that course?
yeah, and I struggle with this myself as a course creator. And I think part of it is being brutally honest about what the course is and how much time it's going to involve, instead of just looking at it as a way to perhaps make some extra income or collect email addresses. I think back to my days in the restaurant industry when I would interview potential employees and I would tell them all the bad things first. And then if they were still there, then I knew that they would be worth, now here's all the cool things that can happen. So I think if perhaps, and I don't mean it in a negative way, but say, to successfully complete this course, you're going to need to spend 2 to 3 hours a week, or, and there's going to be homework and there's things you're going to have to do. And the more you put in, the more you're going to get out of it and the better your chances are of completing.
Right. And it's like you said, it's you have to be very clear on who it's for and what's included, so that you can match that audience to the course.
Right.
Because I think a lot of it, like you said, is a mismatch. Is someone thinks that it's something that it's not. And sometimes pushing away people is just as important as bringing the people to you, because you don't want to have the wrong people taking your product or your program, because it's not going to benefit anyone. It's not going to benefit them. And then they're going to ask you questions. And then that's time on your hands that it's not going to help you out either.
Right. And then the part is, if it is a mismatch, you may have people that are then going, well, don't ever take a course with Mary because, she did it. And so it's also
Mm,
affecting your reputation.
yeah, definitely. And we don't want that at all.
No, no, I mean, in a positive way, yes. But so I think the clearer we can be about what our course is about, who it serves, and what the time commitment is, the easier it will become for people to make good decisions about, is this course for me? Or maybe it's, this course isn't right for me now, but let me revisit it in 6 months.
Right. How do you bring people back in? Have you discovered any way of someone who hasn't taken a course and you found a good way to draw them back into taking that course?
So that's something that I'm working on as well. And I found that just regularly talking about the content, whether it's, being a guest on podcasts or on my own Facebook live show, telling folks about, just dropping subtle things. And it's like, hey, when you're ready, I'm here when, if and when the time is right. So it's much like going out to eat. Some days I want, pizza, and some days I want a burger.
Yeah, yeah. It's what is the saying? It's not no. It's just no right now because
Exactly.
it doesn't mean that I won't take it or am not interested. Obviously, if you buy something, you have some interest in it, but we just got to get those people in the course, and then the gamification aspect I think helps getting them what we call quick wins, a quick way to get them
Exactly.
to achieve something. I think back to one of my more successful courses I did was on the program GarageBand, which is like an audio production program. And the first lecture was a quick 1 minute introduction. The second lecture is like a 15-minute video of me showing how to write a song from beginning to end.
Oh,
And
cool.
it's very fast and it's very crude, but I show the whole process immediately. And in the past, what I had done is I would do it step by step by step. So what I did with this one was I showed the whole process and then I went on to teach the software. But because they had seen that overview of the software, they feel like they get a quick win and, oh, this is something that I can do. And that course has great completion rates. And I think it's because of that.
Yeah, no, I would agree. And it's having that sense of like quick win, or, feeling like my feedback is benefiting. So like if I gave you feedback and said, "Hey Jeremy, that course I took of yours was great, but what I really liked was the fact that you started with the video." And then if you respond back to that student, then it's like, oh, my feedback actually counted for something. That also makes you feel like it's another win. It's like the person teaching the course is actually listening to me. So I think wherever we can build in those quick wins that have real meaning, we're going to have more engaged students.
Yeah, I totally agree with that because how many times do you get a course or you start it and you're watching the videos and you just feel like you're in an empty space by yourself watching these videos over and over. It can become monotonous and boring, especially if it's the same kind of video. But throwing in these gamified elements that are giving you a badge, giving you an alert, making it fun. I mean, that's what it's about. Like you want to have fun while learning. No one wants to go back to boring college class sitting there just listening to someone lecture all day, right?
Exactly, yes, and we think about it, the best teachers we have been the ones that made it fun, kept us engaged. Um, and just real quick, because I know we're just about at time, another technique, and with the software that's available that allows you to automate messages, is even sending out like weekly messages to the class, that aren't necessarily the default canned message that comes with most of the learning management software, but something that recognizes the achievements of the class that week. If it's a cohort style class, like, hey, everybody, we've moved on to week 3, and congratulations to Jeremy for being the first to turn in all of his assignments or something.
Hmm.
That's just another way that shows that, oh, the person teaching it is actually paying attention.
Hmm.
Even if it's an evergreen course, just sending those like little reminders that drop people's names and make them feel valued is another thing that you can do.
Yeah, that harkens back to that Facebook group where the owner of that group, took the time to create that graphic and post that. So that's awesome. I really like that. Awesome. So where do you see just the future of gamification and the future of your business going forward?
Great question. So I think gamification is here to stay. It's probably going to reiterate just like so many things. And I think as consumers and students become a bit more savvy about what gamification is, they're going to expect more from us as course creators. But I really don't see that shift happening for at least another 4 or 5 years, especially when, VR and AR, which we haven't even talked about, start becoming more practical for the average person. I can see some really neat things happening in the course creation space. And in terms of our business, I see that, the 2020 for many folks, including us, was a little bit of an eye opener, and we are back on solid footing. And I see us just working with more individuals to help them build fun, engaging, exciting courses.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's an exciting world that we're living in. I just can't believe the day that you're going to be standing there in your living room and you're going to be standing right there in a augmented reality system, where the teacher could be right there with you, showing you. I just think that would be a really cool aspect if someone's teaching you guitar or teaching you science, that they could be standing in the room doing that.
That's it. Yeah. And we're not quite there yet, but I think in the next 4 to 5 years, we're going to see some just things that we couldn't even imagine happening.
Definitely. Well, Mary, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It's been a pleasure talking to you and just hearing about all this exciting stuff. And I know that there's going to be a lot of people who want to find out more information from you. So where can they do that?
Oh, great question. So you can always go to our website, lavenderdragonteam.com, or just find me on Facebook or LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I hope you the best success in the future, and hopefully this world just keeps going upward in an upward trend, and that brings you in business. And just look forward to your success in the future.
Thanks, Jeremy. It's been great being your guest, and look forward to maybe learning more about GarageBand from you.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today, Mary. You can find out more about her and her business by visiting lavenderdragonteam.com, or you can get the show notes of this episode along with links and resources by visiting onlinecourseigniter.com/17. I look forward to seeing you all next week. Thank you for tuning in to the Online Course Igniter podcast. Make sure you subscribe wherever you're listening so that you don't miss an episode. If you would like to learn more marketing strategies and how to sell your online course, then also check out our free community where we share tips, tricks, and tutorials at onlinecourseigniter.com/community.
Sure, great question. So one of the things that I'd recommend, and I used to do this when I was a trainer training face to face, and I didn't have time, let's say, to proof my work, is build some Easter eggs into your material. And if you watch DVDs or movies, oftentimes.
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Okay. Oftentimes.
Oh my gosh. I've never done that before.
I thought I said like, Easter eggs, and it's like, oh no.
I was like, oh, this is great. She's gonna tell a little story. I got to have a time to take a sip of water, and I was trying to be sneaky, and it did not work. Oh man. Okay. Whew.
Yeah. So.
Hold on. I'll pick that back up. I'll re-ask the question. Let's just start that whole thing over again. Okay. Oh man. I was trying to be sneaky, and I was like, yes. And then how when like you're about to cough and you're trying to stop yourself.
Yes. It just makes it worse.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Whew, let me catch my breath. I'm gonna re-ask that question again. Okay, you good?
I'm good.
I've never done that before. I apologize tremendously. I love it. But hey, like I said, I like to keep it
keep it real.
Keep it real, right? Okay. All right, here we go.